multiple New Zealand record holder, titles, president of the Auckland Powerlifting Association, world record holder, world titles, the current under 52 IPF world champion, but most importantly, famous on social media for getting brutally ragdolled by a Highland Games hammer a couple of years back. It's my pleasure to introduce Evie Corrigan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So firstly, I always like to kick things off by asking our guests a bit about their background in terms of family, sports growing up. So kick us off with telling us a bit about what you were like growing up personally, sports-wise. We can hear you've got a bit of an accent going on there. Tell us a bit more about Evie growing up.
So I was born in London. I'm one of 5 children. 3 of us were born over in the UK and 2 here in New Zealand. We moved here because my mum is a New Zealander. My dad is Irish. I was not a sporty kid. And I was like anti-sports as a teenager. I thought like, this is not for me. I'm not good at this kind of hand-eye coordination business. So that's all good, that's fine. Like I'll focus on other things. And I was really into art actually. So this was like such a curveball that I've now made powerlifting my life. But I kind of started out getting interested in yoga, of all things, and then I went into sort of like partner acrobatic yoga.
Wow.
And then my sister was really into powerlifting, and she just started, and she was like, you know what, I think you'd be good at this. Like, how about you give it a go and I'll coach you for a while. So that's how it happened.
So you've mentioned your siblings and your sister getting you into lifting. Does anyone else in your family lift?
My brother, now he goes to the gym that my sister owns in Christchurch, and my mum goes to the gym that my sister owns, and they do a little bit of like lifting in their sort of general strength classes. My mum actually competed in powerlifting, and Kira, my older sister, she competed a couple of times, but currently no one is like carrying on the Corrigan name in powerlifting, but there's time yet. I have a nephew, he's 3. There's time for him
pressure, right?
to be molded into the perfect powerlifter.
Obviously powerlifting is your life, you've mentioned that, but obviously outside of that you work full time. What do you do for work and what are the best parts of your job?
So I work in a teen parent unit. It's sort of like a little school for teen mums, and they bring their babies on site as well, and there's a daycare there. And I provide health support, so anything and everything really that you might need as a young mum and with a young child. Increasingly, I'm doing a bit more health promotion and like trying to promote good, healthy lifestyles and things, which is like comes with the territory of being really into a sport, I suppose. So I really enjoy passing that on to my students. And I also do a bit of powerlifting coaching as well on the side.
Shout out to Evie's coaching. So you mentioned your sister got you into powerlifting in the first place. Let's just have a little trip down memory lane in terms of your competition history. So do you remember your first competitions? Do you remember what you totaled?
Yeah, so my first comp was Raw Cup in Canterbury because I was still living in Christchurch at the time. I don't remember what I totaled, but it would have been like 200 and something. Like I probably squatted like 70 kilos, maybe like bench 50 and deadlifted like 100 and something.
So half of what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And your first nationals was in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember your first nationals? How it went, what weight class you were in, and how that all went?
Yeah, 2017 in Dunedin. And I remember my family came down to watch, which was notable because after you've been powerlifting for a while, and like I don't blame them at all, but they kind of stop watching the comps because like it's a long time. It's not that interesting. They're only there to see you, and they see you for like less than 10 minutes in the space of like 4 hours. So yeah, that was cool. I think I was battling it out for like a bench record with a couple of other 52. I think I competed open. And I was battling for the 52 open bench record.
So by 2018, you were already representing New Zealand, competing on the world stage in the junior division at the IPF World Champs. Do you remember that first Junior Worlds, I don't want to give too much away, that first title? Give us a little bit of insight into what you can remember from that competition.
From when the seed was first planted that maybe I would go to Worlds, to like what actually transpired at the event, really like massive change in expectations. Because when I first entered, my coach at the time was like, oh yeah, you could maybe get a bench medal because they do medals for individual lifts. And I was like, yeah, that would be super cool. Like I'd be stoked with like getting on the podium for any lift. So that's kind of like where we started. And then, you know, I guess as we got closer to the comp and my strength was progressing, I didn't really realize this, but my coach was like, oh, she could maybe win this. Like he thought I could win. I was nominated 6th. And even during like the competition, my nerves were just so high. I had like no concept of what was going on. I was just so overwhelmed by like how different the experience was, like not knowing everyone that you were competing against. Like that's really different to what it's like in New Zealand where they're all your mates.
Right.
You're like, I don't know any of these people, and none of them wanted to talk to me. They were like not very friendly, which I found quite confronting. And then I ended up winning, and like I was completely shocked.
And you came away with some junior world records?
Yeah, the squat and the total, I think.
So, just sort of change direction a little bit. You've been powerlifting for a number of years now. What is it that you like about powerlifting? What attracted you to it in the first place, and what keeps you coming back to it?
I think that my love for powerlifting has really like evolved over the years. When I first started, I really enjoyed like being able to see yourself progressing. Like it's so tangible, it's so quantifiable. You can lift more next week than you did last week. And that is entirely kind of dependent on yourself and what work you put in. But then I think like obviously as time progresses, it's harder to get those PBs, to get those gains every week as you become a lifter who's more advanced. And I started to find other joys in it, like the community, I guess giving back to the sport. Like I've found so much joy in running competitions now and trying to make the fed as good as we possibly can so that like more people want to join and more people find the sport of powerlifting. And I think like through that whole journey, it's just been discovering abilities in myself that I didn't know that I had and never would have thought that I was capable of.
So you touched a little bit there on, in recent years you've become a bit more hands-on with your involvement with sort of running competitions, that side of it, with Auckland Powerlifting, with the NZPF. So my next question is, why the NZPF, why the IPF? What makes it, in your eyes, the best powerlifting federation in the world?
I mean, I think the NZPF is the best national federation in the world, like hands down. And I think that we're kind of lucky in how that came about, because it really could have gone either way. When we had a big rift a couple of years ago, and it was politics, but you know, we had so much young blood come through, myself included, and it took it in a real different direction. And I think that one of the reasons it's so good now is we're really invested in trying to make it the best for the lifters. Like, how can we make this a really good experience for our lifters? How can we grow it more? What is going to give people more opportunities to do more meets and like make these meets more exciting and all that. And I think for the IPF, like there isn't really another equally legitimate option. And the IPF is growing so fast that I don't think anything's even close to catching up.
So we're going to fast forward a lot now to some subjects that I know that a lot of people have had questions about and will be interested in. So we're going to go to Worlds of 2022 firstly. If I'm not mistaken, this was your first Open Worlds. You competed in the under 57 class. Talk to me a bit about the prep going into that, about what the whole experience of that first Worlds was like. Were you happy with how it went, where you ended up placing?
Yeah, 2022 Worlds was a bit of a weird one, because I think like we were coming back off of the back of COVID. I'd taken a bit of time away and done Olympic weightlifting for a bit. I was coming back to powerlifting, and like my strength was in a good place, but I just didn't really have the comp experience because we hadn't been able to have comps. So Worlds ended up being my first comp in a whole year, which maybe doesn't sound that crazy, but I am quite an anxious lifter, and I found that really affected me, like to go to such a high level comp where, you know, it was my first open Worlds, my first time competing against like my idols, was a bit intimidating. And I just made some mistakes. I just kind of caked it on some of my attempts. I don't even know what went wrong, but I caked my second squat and then like came back and got it on my third. And I did the same thing on my deadlift. So it was a real learning curve, like to really invest more in how I manage my emotions during a competition, because that's kind of how it can affect me. And I think coming fourth was still like a really good outcome, but I definitely could have done better if I hadn't made those mistakes.
So from there, we're going to segue now to talk to you about the most sort of impactful, the biggest powerlifting comp that I've ever heard of was Sheffield. For those that might not be familiar with it, can you explain the format of the competition and how it sort of differs with a regular powerlifting competition? And maybe talk a little bit about your strategy, your strategy with your coach in terms of dropping a weight class. Maybe even touch on the ups and downs of the preps and the rundown of the comp day itself.
Yeah, so Sheffield is an invitational competition, so you have to be invited. It's 12 men and 12 women, sort of mostly spread out across the weight classes, and they also have like regional invites as well, to try and get lifters from unrepresented regions. So yeah, it's sort of spread across world champions, regional invites, and some wildcards. I was initially invited in 2020 as a regional invite, representing the Oceania region, and the competition was cancelled.
No good.
And so I got invited again for 2023, again as a regional invite. So I guess like for that reason, a lot of people maybe didn't pay a lot of attention to me because I wasn't up there with one of the world champions. You know, I came fourth at Worlds. I came fourth at Worlds as a 57 as well. So people were like, oh yeah, like it's just a nice like participation meet for her. The way that the competition is like ranked is by the percentage of the world record total you achieve. So the closer you can get to the world record or even exceed the world record, you get higher in the rankings.
Right.
And there's also money that can be won for breaking world records in individual lifts as well.
Good.
Money's good. Yeah, I mean, it's really like the first of its kind for many reasons, but one of them being like you can win a substantial amount of money.
What kind of money are we talking?
I think for first place, it's £25,000. Each individual record was £5,000.
Wow. And you came away with 105%
yeah.
of the world record. Talk to us about that. The comp went pretty well for you, right? 9 for 9, 560, some world records.
Yeah, so I guess like going in knowing that no one was really expecting much from me. We were just sort of there to participate and like enjoy the experience because like it was going to be an incredible experience no matter what. And like I was happy with that, but I'd sort of done a mini cut at the end of 2022 to prep for bulking up into Sheffield.
Right.
So I was sitting around 55 kilos and I competed at Commonwealths, which we held here in Auckland. And I managed to basically like total the same or like very close to my best total, but at like 4 kilos lighter or something. And so Jason, my coach, sort of took pause and was like, how did that work? Like, what if she dropped down? Like, could she maintain much of her strength? Like, okay, he did the math and sort of plotted out everyone's best totals and their percentage of the world record, and then like, okay, well, what if Evie competes as 52 and loses 5 kilos off her total? Well, she could win. What if she uses 10 kilos? Will she still be really up there? What if she loses 15 kilos off her total? Yeah, like she'd still be really up there even if she lost quite a lot of strength. And so he sort of proposed this idea to me, and initially I was like, I never want to go back to 52. What do you like? Why would you suggest this?
Right.
How dare you?
Quite resistant then.
Because I love food so much, and I was like, nah, I'm like not about it. And he was like, well, just hear me out. I was like, okay, show me the numbers. And he did, and he said, you could win 58,000 New Zealand dollars because of the conversion at the time. And I was like, oh shit, okay. That's quite a lot.
I would buy it for that much money.
Yeah, so at that point you're like, well, I can make sacrifices. And I think that's where Sheffield is so special because, yeah, like there's so much on the line, you will push yourself that hard. And when you haven't really got much to lose, like I was probably going to come like 12th out of 12. And, you know, it gave me this potential shot at first. It's like kind of a no-brainer.
So you came in the end first out of all 24 lifters. Can you put it into words how that made you feel?
Just like complete disbelief, to be honest. Like,
has it sunk in now?
I don't think so. I don't know if it ever will. Like, I try to tell myself, well, you should enjoy this because like how many times is this going to happen in your life? But it's just so hard to reconcile like that I am that person who achieved that thing because it's, I don't know, it's like feels so unbelievable and the imposter syndrome is strong.
Have you spent any of the money?
No.
Where is it?
I locked it away in a term deposit until I could work out what to do with it.
So good. Okay, so we're going to fast forward a little bit to June of this year. Malta, your second IPF Worlds in 2 years. You're coming fresh off Sheffield just a few months prior to that. I'm sure now expectations were very high. From memory, you managed to go 8 for 9. Can you just give us a little recap of your Worlds experience, your time in Malta, and a little bit about the competition day itself?
Worlds was kind of a weird one after Sheffield because I think like, I don't know if you saw any of the videos from the event, but like it was really full on. Like it was really loud. It was in this big theater and there was heaps of lights and they had like a smoke machine and glow sticks and like it was just sensory overload. And I think also all the hype for it, that then Worlds after that was a bit of like an anticlimax. And although like we went in knowing that I would still need to battle Noemi again, who was the other 52 who'd been invited to Sheffield, even though I had an invite to next year's Sheffield 2024 automatically from winning. To solidify things, I also needed to become the world champion. But it didn't really feel like as big of an event as I think it should have because of that, like coming off the back of Sheffield. So the whole day went really smoothly, like really so smoothly that I didn't even need to take my last attempt. So I just, Jason said to me like, you might not need to take your third deadlift. And I said, what do you mean? Like, why not? And he was like, because we don't need it. And we don't want to increase the world record by any more because when I go to Sheffield next year, like that's more for me to have to break. So we want to keep it straight, flat 460. He's like, just go out and shake the ref's hands. I was like, are they going to be mad at me? Like for not doing it? And like people were pretty shocked. And one of the referees even said to me, he's like, oh, I thought that you were going to go and like do the attempt after shaking everyone's hands. Like they were just like so much confusion. But yeah, so I won off of 8 attempts, just equaled the world record and became a world champion. And it just felt like, I don't know, not as hard as it should have been.
Wow. Obviously in the pipeline now, the next Sheffield 2024, it's going to be way different for you this time. You're going in with a target on your back almost. You're coming back as sort of the reigning champ. What's going to be different for you this time? What are you going to try and keep the same? Talk to us about your strategy leading into the next Sheffield and maybe compare it to how it's going to be different from what you did previously.
Yeah, this next one is going to be so different. I mean, I'm going from being not a complete nobody, but like, you know, I was very much under the radar and now I'm very much not. Yeah, that'll be a weird experience in whole, like, because when we're at the event, we all stay in the same hotel and we're there several days prior and doing media stuff. And I felt last time that like no one really knew who I was. And this time I just wonder how different the vibe's going to be. But I guess we'll see. But in terms of like competing, I think really I just have to approach it exactly the same, and it's just all about me trying to get the best total that I can, and that's going to put me in the best position to win or to place well. I mean, it's easy to say, like, I just won't pay attention to what everyone else is doing, but I think that's really the best way for me to succeed, because I don't do well with that pressure. It does not fuel me.
So you mentioned a little bit earlier, competing on the world stage, sometimes you feel like, man, I'm competing with my idols. So talk to us a little bit about your influences in terms of powerlifting right now. Who do you still look up to? I know you are that girl right now, that female at the top, but who do you look up to, and is there anyone that you still actively sort of fangirl over when you're in the same room as them?
Yeah, I think I still pay quite a lot of attention to the 57 class.
Right.
And this year at Worlds, it was Natalie Richards versus Jade Jacob, and that was just like phenomenal. And they're both insanely strong. And at some point, I probably will move back up into the 57s, and that's terrifying for me because
That's terrifying for everybody else, I'm sure.
They're so strong. Like, they're both incredible, and they're both like really lovely people, and like, yeah, so I admire them a lot.
You've mentioned previously you've seen sort of a shift in your mindset on competition day and how you manage yourself. What's been different in the last year or so? Can you unpack that for us a little bit in terms of comp day, mindset, any little habits and rituals you might have?
What I found worked for me best was actually just trying to focus on calming myself rather than hyping myself up. Like, the hype was just adding to my anxiety. I also just really try to focus on what I'm doing and what I can control, and just trying to do the best that I can and not really put any pressure on myself to achieve a certain outcome. Like, I pay no attention to the numbers during the meet. I'm just focusing on going out there and like doing each of the steps right that will create the right lift, if that makes sense. So like, I have a bit of a process for each lift, and if I can follow those steps, I'm sort of out of my head and I'm in my body, and I just do the movement. Just do that same thing that you do thousands and thousands of times in the gym, but just in a different setting.
100%. So what would be one piece of advice you might give your younger self, reflecting on what you've just spoken about? One piece of advice you'd give someone starting out, maybe?
Like, one piece is hard. I have too many.
Well, let's rattle them off then. Let's hear it.
Nah, I think my number one is just always like, just be consistent. Like, just show up and like practice. That is the number one thing for getting better at anything, is just practicing it, just doing it day in, day out. And sometimes in powerlifting, I think it is kind of a game of like last man standing. Like, if you can stick it out and you can stay healthy and you can sort of evolve your motivation so that you don't get burnt out, then you will eventually end up a winner, like, in my eyes.
And that's important. So what do you think we can do in New Zealand to make powerlifting more popular and to grow participation?
I think like young people is really the future of our sport, and trying to reach out to younger groups I think would be really awesome for powerlifting. We're in with the university age and we're like starting to break into high school, and I think social media has made a huge difference there, like in reaching younger lifters, because they're all about the
Everyone's
TikToks.
on their phone, yeah.
But yeah, I just like the idea that there's something other than those team sports that we kind of get pushed when we're in school. Like, here's this other route for you. Like, maybe you're not good at catching balls or throwing them or like hitting things with a bat, which was me. Here's this other option, like, and there's so much that you can learn through this process. And particularly for young women, like, I think it's so empowering and like can be so great for your confidence. So we're sort of taking that route now, like trying to run more workshops for young people. We just ran some workshops the last couple of weekends specifically for women and like women who maybe have barriers to accessing movement or exercise. So that was super cool, and I hope that like some of them have been bitten by the bug and keep going.
So we're getting pretty close to the end, but just a couple more questions. Talk to us about your future goals inside powerlifting and maybe even outside of it, in the back of your mind, things you'd like to achieve in the next sort of year, 2 years, 5 years.
In the short term, there's Sheffield 2024. I would love to be invited back for another Sheffield. I'd love to keep going to as many Sheffields as possible because it really is like the most incredible competition experience. Worlds is on the radar for next year, 2024, and that is the qualifier for World Games, which is sort of like the Olympics, but for sports that don't make it into the Olympics. So World Games is in 2025, and if I can place highly at Worlds next year, then I can get invited to World Games, which is, again, will be just like a completely new experience, very different to powerlifting competitions. It's, multi-sport event that's in Chengdu in China, and I've spent a bit of time in China before, so I'd love to go back there. So I think that's sort of like the ultimate goal at the moment. Outside of powerlifting, I've been so lucky in that like powerlifting's given me the opportunity to go to all these places, and it's sort of ended up aligning with my life goals a bit, that like it's opened these doors for me to be able to do that, and hopefully that continues. Like I'd love to move overseas and continue to kind of bring people into the sport and still work with young people. So that's my long-term goal.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of everybody watching this on the internet, just a massive thank you for sharing part of your story, your insights into the world of powerlifting on the world stage, and letting us, sort of get to know you a little bit better. I just want to say keep on pushing the envelope in terms of what can be achieved, what's possible for female powerlifters at the highest level, and all the best for Sheffield coming up and anything else that comes your way.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so we're going to get into our quick fire round. Basically, I've got 10 questions for you. I want you to answer them as quickly as possible. Just a little snapshot, some sort of extra questions to get to know Evie a little bit better. So we'll start off with an easy one. You can only pick one: squat, bench, deadlift.
Bench.
Last song you listened to?
Oh, I think it was Lady Gaga.
Talk to us about the essentials in your gym bag. Pick 3.
Belt, knee sleeves, and my slippers.
Favorite competition day snack?
Delights, salt and vinegar crackers.
Shout out to Delights. Sweet or savory?
Savory.
Late night or early morning?
Neither.
What's the longest you've ever trained for in one session?
Oh, like 5 hours.
Man. One place in the world you'd love to visit that you haven't visited already?
Ooh.
Quick fire.
Korea.
Shout out Korea. Last one. Best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh, that's a really hard quick fire one.
Tick, top. Tick,
I think
top.
like that, control what you can control. Focus on,
Smashed it.
what you can do.
Thank you. Pressure, eh?
Yeah, I hate a quick fire question.
I'm saying I didn't have any trick questions in front of me. No clickbait.
Your brain immediately goes blank. You're like,